As I sink deeper into the world of gacha games, so does my wallet. I think the best way to not lose track of how much money you spend on mobile game microtransactions is to simply track it. Hi, I'm Psyche, and in this semi-scripted video, I want to revisit this past year, do a broad overview of where my money went in terms of the gacha games I played. The main reason I had this idea is to be a bit transparent on what my attitude towards gacha games are, and hopefully promote some healthy spending habits regarding spending your cash on mobile games. This video is not fully scripted, so I might go on tangents on something that's a little bit off topic. Now first, I want to make it clear that I have nothing against spending money on these games. Whether you're a free-to-play, drop a few bucks here or there, or if you're a whale, doesn't matter to me. I can't tell anyone that they spent their money incorrectly, but I can explain what I think are healthy spending habits and how to go into gacha game spending with a better mindset. First, I want to outline what I think are worthy purchases and which ones are not. When it comes to spending money on mobile games, I usually classify two categories of purchases that I would consider. The first is what I call the value pack. It's an item or service that doesn't cost a lot, but generates a lot of value, usually over a long term. This would be your Welkin, or your seasonal battle passes. You don't necessarily have a plan for the rewards you get from these packs, but you're prepared to commit to playing the game for a while, and it's simply the most bang for your buck. The second type of purchase I will consider is what I call the guarantee pack. Basically, it's a purchase that you know you will benefit from. There is no upper limit on how much this can cost. If a $100 pack guarantees what you want from the game and you're loaded with cash, then feel free to still consider it. What's important here is that you must feel like you're in control of what your money is buying you. So let me demonstrate this. When I played FGO, every year it would have 2 rounds of special banners called the Guaranteed SSR. You will spend some money to roll on a selected banner, and the game will give you at least one of the SSRs on that banner selected randomly from a pool. Let's say you already have one of the SSRs on there in your roster. So if you happen to get unlucky and roll that specific one, then you would end up with a dupe, which I imagine is not something most players will be pleased with. Of course, if you don't care which one you get, even if it is a dupe, then no problem. A purchase like this would definitely qualify as a guarantee pack. But it gets pretty dangerous if the purchase was not guaranteed to benefit you in your eyes. In most of the modern titles like Genshin or Wuthering Waves, the most expensive top-up pack is actually not enough to guarantee a limited SSR of your choice from zero pity built up, even with the first top-up bonus. This means if you set aside a budget of $100 of your hobby funds with getting a copy of Shorekeeper, then I'm sorry to say this, but you're gambling. In this scenario, you can win or you can lose. If you win, great. But if you lose, well, what happens then? Humans have a natural tendency to want to avoid losses. I went over this briefly in a previous video, but basically when you lose in anything, you feel as if there is a need to compensate, to make back what you lost. It's like if you lost an online match in a video game before going to bed. Well, that sort of leaves a sour taste, so you might be inclined to play one more in the hopes of winning, just to leave it off at a good note. But in the context of a gacha game, what might someone do in this case? Well, they might forcibly pay another $100, since they haven't gotten the target they wanted, and that might create some dissonance. After all that, even though they have obtained Shorekeeper, can you really call that a victory? We live in a world where paying for the direct currency to reach pity for a character in a gacha game can extend to the $100 or $200 mark. I want to make it clear that this is normal in a gacha game, and in some cases actually improved upon what's there in the old school gachas. Do I recommend doing it? No, absolutely not. I'd rather just buy an actual figurine of the character at that point. I think this is one aspect that makes mobile games so dangerous, because the moment you lose on a gamble, you feel compelled to spend more than what you intended to. If you ask me, the best way to handle a situation like this is to consider, what is my worst case scenario, and how would I feel if I got that? If all outcomes of your purchase benefits you, then no problem. It's definitely worth considering a buy. But if it doesn't, then I would really think twice. Okay, something else you might have wondered. What about skins? They can range from any amount of money, but you know what you're getting, so what's my opinion on skins? Well, first, I wouldn't think poorly of anyone that spends money on them. I think they can be pretty pricey these days, but hey, if buying the skins didn't involve gambling, then you're free to do what you want with your own cash. Me personally though, nah. I don't buy skins in gacha games unless maybe if it's part of a battle pass. I think at most a skin should be $10. Those Nikke and Punishing Grey Raven skins with their separate gacha system, I don't care how good they look. I mean, come on, this is not worth $50. I'd easily trade my poor decision of buying 2B's skin for a copy of Baldur's Gate 3. I personally don't think these are even worth considering, but hey, that's just my opinion. Okay, so with all that out of the way, I hope you can kind of get a feel of what my attitudes are for spending money in mobile games. Let's go through each gacha game I played this year and summarize how much I spent on them. By the way, all my spendings are estimations, since I have to do a conversion from Canadian dollars. First one on this list is Nikke. I actually spent more than $100 during my first year of playing it, and I still play it today, but I have taken week-long breaks every now and then. The total amount I spent in 2024 on Nikke is a whopping $15. The first 3 months of the 30-day supply, and then I just went free to play. Something I feel is that you feel less shackled down by these games if you just don't pay for any subscriptions, because you feel like you're not owing the game anything. You're not losing anything of monetary value for not logging in. Yes, this means I did not buy any of the battle passes or skins. I don't think these are worth it. I'll still tune into new chapters and events every now and then. I don't know if I'll make content on it anymore, but it is still one of my ongoing gacha games, and to this day technically makes it my longest ongoing one of all time. Next up is Snowbreak Containment Zone. I played it for 1 month back when I was doing the review earlier this year, and I spent $5. I just bought the monthly supply. Since the last time we reviewed it, it's gone through a lot of iterations, and I'm glad it's finally found its identity and has a following now. If you ask me, no gacha game has really explored the third-person shooter angle, and while I do think the gunplay of it is pretty mid, but I mean, it's a mobile game, and to be honest, there's actually no competitors for it at the moment, so. It gets praised quite often for its high-quality skins, but I would prefer if the characters were paid and they just gave out some of the skins for free. And from what I've seen, some units actually reuse their animations and voice lines despite being different units altogether. I think it's a little bit weird that what the game is most known for is locked behind a paywall, and that's kind of my reason of not sticking around. Though to be fair, I might return when they rewrite the story though. I hear it is getting a full voiceover and the later chapters are pretty good, including a revamp of the first couple chapters. So overall, it's a pretty decent shooter if you're into a little bit of fan service, but if I wanted a shooter game, I'd probably just be playing something else. Next up is Limbussy Company. This is one of the few games that took me a while to take a liking to it. I spent a total of around $70, mainly from the Battle Pass and the 30-day supplies. I quite like the story and the characters. The Battle Pass is a very good purchase from what I've seen, probably the best in a gacha game, and you get a lot of value from it. I think it's pretty insane that you can actually just trade in the currency to get the characters instead of going through the gacha. You can't just kind of ignore the gacha completely and just grind instead. I know a lot of the Limbus fanatics will be wondering this, so I'll just get it out of the way first. Here is my tier list for story arcs in gacha games. I'll place the latest Kantos like this. I liked Kanto 7 to be in my top 3, but I think 6 still has a B by a whole tier, and I actually like 5 just a little bit better. This is one of my ongoing games, though I don't plan to play it every day, which leads to one of the issues I have with it now that I beat all the story content. There's like nothing to do in the game other than farming the mirror dungeon. They seem to have this mindset that all content should be related to the lore, even though I kinda disagree. If they just make like bi-weekly rotating challenge stages, I think that'll satisfy a lot of long-term players, even if it doesn't have a new enemy or anything. Just use the existing stages and kinda shake up the rules a little bit. There is a new Season 5 mirror dungeon and some other monthly updates, though I don't think mirror dungeon alone is good enough for endgame content. Like if a new character releases, even if you pull them, like where can you use them in? So overall, I do like the world building it has. I'll be waiting patiently for any new story arcs, but for now I'm just gonna put this one on the shelf every now and then. Oh, and they're doing a collab with Arknights or whatever. I tried out the tower defense genre with Path to Nowhere. This one, I spent a total of $5, and it's just one round of the monthly supply. I think this is one of the hidden gems in the gacha genre. I'm not particularly a fan of tower defense, but this game hits all the right spots for a gacha game. The artwork, the characters, the amount and frequency of content. I'd really highly recommend this one if you're into tower defense. I just don't really like the genre, that's all. Next up is Reverse 1999. I spent around $45, and this comes from a couple rounds of the Battle Pass and 4 or so rounds of the monthly supply. This is also the first time I took sponsored content on this channel, and I'm to the point where a small stream of marketing agencies reach out regarding these sponsorships. How I approach it is that if you watch the GFL 2 review, first I need to have full confidence in the game in order to accept one. I usually look at the monetization, general online opinions towards it, or is it high quality enough? There's a general sentiment online that all YouTube sponsors are grifts or shills. In my eyes, how can I be a shill if I can personally stand behind the product and actually play it in this case? Because I did. I personally played Reverse 1999 for around 4 months. It's a very high quality game. The sound design is the best I've seen in a gacha. Just listening to the transient music and the subtle sound effects in the lobby makes it feel like the game is equivalent to escaping to its own little world. It's got beautiful art, good story, fair gacha rates, no weapon banner, no RNG artifacts. SSRs get moved to the standard pool after a couple months, and when I return, I even saw that past events, after a certain amount of time have passed, do get added to an archive. This game is on Steam now, and it's the closest game to an overwhelming positive review that I've seen for a gacha game. I'll likely play it sometime to catch up to the story, and it's one that I'd still absolutely recommend, even if it's not sponsored. Now you might be wondering, okay, so if you played it for 4 months, why did you leave? And the reason might not even make that much sense. It's simply because there's actually too much content. Now, I'm the type of person that don't like to miss out on certain things when it comes to like rewards and everything. It just felt like I was playing catch up all the time and I didn't want to be part of that. So it's not even the game is bad, it's not even there's like drought periods where there's a lack of content. It's just that there's too much for me to handle, which for some people is actually a very good thing. This spring, I played Tower of Fantasy. I actually spent around $25 on it. This comes from one round of the monthly supply and one in-game package, though I don't remember which one exactly. I've had a lot of retrospective on this review after many months after my video on it was released. It wasn't until I started interacting with these games with smaller communities that as much as most of the online space clowns on this game and says that it's dying, every game, no matter how small or hated by the mainstream audience, has its share of passionate and dedicated fan bases. There are people that still play Tower of Fantasy and still want it to succeed. The video was biased to frame that the game is dying, which okay, it technically is, but I feel as if I were to cover a game that was in the same situation as TOF in the future, I would not try to frame it as negatively. As a single-player experience, you can still have a lot of fun playing it. There's a lot of effort put into designing the world and the story. Overall, I hope the people playing this are still having fun, but luckily Hoda Games is releasing Neverness to Everness, which is kind of like a GTA open-world gacha game. I really hope it's their redemption arc to learn what went wrong with this one. I spent around $20 on Brown Dust 2. I bought the monthly supply and another one of the guarantee banner packs, so I don't remember exactly which one. This game will give Nikke a run for its money for its fan service. There is so much unadulterated raunchiness that it makes it less safe to play in public than Nikke. It is also the only gacha game I've seen with a free battle pass. It's not quite comparable to the other ones with a skin, but still. Since the last time we've seen it, they have announced that they're stopping new male characters from releasing, so it seems like the game has found its audience. It's a fairly simple game, the core concepts as the first one, but it has been simplified. I imagine most of the revenue is made from its PvP, but you can just not bother with it and still have a good time. The gacha is 200 pulls with no pity carryover, but the only thing is that this game literally gives out pulls like free candy. Every banner that releases gives you a free daily pull, so if a banner is active for 3 weeks, then you literally just get 21 free pulls. And you get this for every banner that comes out. If you're looking into it, the 1.5-year anniversary is out right now, and one of the rerun characters is actually pretty meta, but to be honest, you don't need this character to be meta to have a reason to pull them. Wuthering Waves is my personal successor to Genshin Impact. I spent a total of around $50 on Welkins and Battle Passes. This was my open world replacement from May to October. I still wanted to try an open world gacha game that just felt different. Now, aesthetics and design-wise, Wuthering Waves looks stunningly good. The gameplay feels very satisfying, the world design is decent past what was there at launch, the gacha is fair, and the weapon banner is superior to most other modern gachas. You are guaranteed to get the weapon when you pull an SSR. So this means that if you happen to want a newly released character, if you happen to win the 50-50 coin flip, you can just go for the weapon as well. The reason I stopped playing comes from one aspect. I just couldn't really get into the lore and the world building. There are 3 points I don't judge a gacha game for: gameplay, story, and music. These are actually pretty important to me personally when it comes to picking which games to maintain. I like the feeling of being invested by some quality writing, and I look forward to how the plot or story develops. And I just couldn't really feel it with Wuthering Waves. The points I bring up in reviews tend to be more objective, like how fair is the monetization, how good is the presentation, how good is the game being maintained. So gameplay, story, and music tend to be more subjective. I can't say that a real-time brawler is better than a tower defense. I can't say that the story is better just because it happens to resonate with me personally. I can't say the music is better than another game because it's a certain genre or style. Obviously, there are exceptions. If the gameplay has some glaring bugs or glitches, then I might have some questions. If the music is just someone banging sticks on rocks, then yeah, I might have some questions. So while there are certain aspects I don't judge in reviews, these usually do end up being the main factors if I decide to stick around or leave. To be fair, if I were to return to one of these 2 games, I'd still pick Wuthering Waves over Genshin. Okay, so jumping forward a couple months, on Punishing Grey Raven I spent around $25. It was 1 monthly supply and 1 of the anniversary packs. Now here's a real talk from me. After having played both Kuro Games' games, I would personally recommend PGR over Wuthering Waves. There's something about the setting, the characters, the tone that PGR has that makes it feel really different. It used to be considered a Honkai 3 clone when it first released, but the way it plays and feels is really distinct. First, the music is an absolute upgrade from Wuthering Waves. I don't know why they couldn't have just kept the same or similar composers, because Wuthering Waves' music, at least in my eyes, is just kinda there. I didn't really mind it, but it also didn't really stick out to me. It also doesn't shy away from darker themes, but it also has the age-old gacha curse of the story only picking up to be really good way deeper into the main chapters. The gacha is also fair. There's no 50-50, so you're guaranteed to get the rate-up character you want after a certain amount of pulls. I wish more games followed this system instead. I might actually return to it sometime in the future, maybe sometime during the next year's half-anniversary event. I will likely just be going through the story to see if it's actually as good as some people say it is. If it is, then I'll definitely make a follow-up video. Last but not least, Heaven Burns Red. It shouldn't be a surprise if you watch my latest videos. And this is the game I spent the most money on this year, totaling around $160. It is a combination of the monthly subscription and other packs. As you know, this is the second game sponsor I took for this channel. And I want to repeat, if you see sponsored content regarding a gacha game on this channel, then just know that I can personally vouch for the game and I am invested in playing it for at least a few months. I have history reading the visual novels that the same writers produced. I know how good Key Studios' stories are. Because as soon as I saw the announcement, I would have made an intro and a guide on the game anyways. So if the agency reaches out for a sponsorship, that's literally a win-win for me. It's infinitely better than forcing myself to praise a game that I think is not that good at all. Usually with monthly subscriptions or battle passes, I force myself to only spend it on one game at a time, because these tend to add up if you follow multiple games at once. HBR is a Japanese game, meaning that it's gonna have its share of common tropes seen in anime. But it's also a title where I'm personally very invested in the story. The first 3 chapters don't go that hard, it's mainly just there for setup, but I was still super impressed with the writing. Is it gonna be for everyone? No, I don't think so. Anime humor is very subjective. There's a lot of yelling, there's a lot of melodrama. I used to watch anime when I was still a late teen, and the longest ever anime series I watched from beginning to end was Gintama. I personally think Gintama is on the same level as some of the most revered shonen anime in history like Hunter x Hunter or Naruto. The issue is that not everyone likes anime humor, but this kind of dynamic and chemistry in the cast just works for me. To put into perspective, and this is slightly off topic, but the only anime series that has made me buy the original physical media was the Monogatari series by Nishiyoshin. I have the first 2 volumes of the light novels sitting on my shelf. This type of back and forth dialogue with all sorts of witty remarks is the style that I like to see. Heaven Burns Red is written by Jun Maeda, a very prominent writer for visual novels back in the early 2000s era. His works are presented in the top visual novels of all time, notably Clannad and Little Busters. While he has been involved with some music composition in Key's newer works, also writing for the anime Angel Beats from 2010 and Charlotte from 2015, some fans thought that Maeda was slightly off his game, as both anime were perceived to have a solid concept, but was too rushed near the end. He's more suited to write long-form stories instead. When it was announced that he was finally writing a new visual novel again after 15 years, fans were curious to see if he's still able to reclaim his glory days. And the short answer is yes. When Chapter 4 concluded on JP, that was what made fans realize Maeda is back. I like the state the English server is at, and personally I'll be chipping away at my in-game upgrades to prepare for Chapters 4 and 5, which is rumored to be completed very early in 2025. It's actually split into 2 parts, and my expectations for this is sky high. So yeah, HBR is not going to be for everyone, but I'm very invested. Alright, so that's all the money I've donated to the gacha gods. I've tried out some other gachas this year too, but I didn't spend money on them. This includes Sword of Convaleria, Zenless Zone Zero, Memento Mori, Counterside, Wizardry, and Girls Frontline 2. Did you think that was a lot or just completely healthy? I realized that gacha games and by extension mobile games don't really have a favorable reputation in the general gaming space. They can be addictive and induce gambling-like behavior, but that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy them with moderation. I think the most important aspect to control your spending is track how much you spent in total and just think to yourself, did I get my money's worth? The moment you lose control is the moment the game takes over. Anyways, let me know what you think. I'm thinking of doing one of these at the end of every year, just for a little bit of check-in. So be sure to practice self-control and have fun out there.